Welcome to Freshly Forever, a podcast that gives you fascinating insights week after week. Here's your host, Vi Kumar.
Hey folks, welcome to another episode on podcast Freshly Forever. Today we are here to break down the topic of what it means to be really healthy. Health, I guess, is a combination of emotional, physical, and social well-being. But let's find out what our expert, Nidhi Pandya, an Ayurvedic practitioner from New York, has to say on these different aspects as she walks us through the different facets from an Ayurvedic perspective. Ayurveda is an ancient Indian system of medicine that truly is the science of life. It just tells us how we basically lead life so we can be on this path to wellness. Let's get to it. Your background in Ayurveda, can you tell listeners how it all started and how you got oriented and initiated into it, please?
So I was actually born in a family where my grandfather was an Ayurvedic healer. So, and I lived in a huge joint family. So everything, I thought that's how everybody in the world lives, actually. I was naive enough to think that way. But I basically grew up with it as a part of my daily life. Always, given that we were a family of 14 people, there was always awareness that each person responds differently to heat, to the weather, to different foods, to even different emotional stimulus, right? Like, for example, I say that if, something went off, if two of us were scolded for something, each person responds differently. So the awareness that what you are within, what your body and your mind are within is really how you interact with the world. And a lot of the Western focus is that, it depends on what you consume, but it depends on how you process what you consume. And that was a big part of our awareness growing up. I did not study Ayurveda till adulthood. Eventually when I became an adult and I was studying more sociology, psychology, marketing till that point. But when I reached a point and I said, wow, like what's really missing in the world is this awareness of self, which comes through Ayurveda. And then I went and got years and years of formal education. And I always say that it never ends. So I'm still, it's such a vast and amazing science. So I'm still a student of Ayurveda. But really my journey started with being born into a family which had this deep awareness.
Excellent. And every day is a learning journey, right, for all of us. So, it's a continuous process. And speaking about, you said how each of us react to situations is all because of what we are composed of and, what we are right now. So is that what Ayurveda often talks about as it relates to gunas and doshas? And can you tell listeners what the relevance of those are to one's prakriti and vikruti, which I guess, to put it in, like very basic terms, is what you are born with and what you are post.
Right. And, just again, if I put it into perspective, I'm going to start talking about what doshas are for people in a very simple manner. And then we'll talk about what prakriti is and what vikruti is in relationship with doshas. And for anybody who's listening, even if you've never heard about doshas or Ayurveda, let's just present you with this idea. So as a human body, as a human being, there are three functions that you're essentially doing throughout your life. The three functions are building, right? And you're always building cells, you're building nutrient, you're building tissues out of the foods you eat. There's always a building process, which you can, of course, it's exaggerated in childhood because it's really a building phase. You're born maybe 18, 19 inches, and by a year's time, you are like this toddler, right? So the building is exaggerated in childhood, but you have a building function. And there's another function, transformation, because we are building. And then we all need to transform. You need to transform the food that we eat. When we see something or we read something, we transform that into information and memories. You're transforming nervous signals all the time. So transformation is a second function, that we have as human beings, a very dominant function. The third is movement and decline, right? For all of this to happen, for even your arm to move or for transportation of substances, to happen, there's a function of movement which is inherent in your body. And I say movement and decline because things need to be eliminated from your body, right? Even as we age, things need to kind of, decline, decay, eliminate. And that is a third function, right? Now, in terms of doshas, these are the functions. The kapha dosha is the building function. Your body is building, building, building. That is supported by this term called kapha dosha. Transformation is supported by something called pitta dosha, which transforms everything. And the movement and decline is supported by vata dosha. However, what we can have is a tendency to have one of these functions more exaggerated than others. So in an ideal situation, you're building appropriately, you're transforming appropriately, and then your movement and decline is appropriate, right?
So in other words, all of us have all three components. It's just what we are kind of more dominant or made, rather, we tend to show more dominance on, correct?
Exactly, right? So the way I say, right, is that of course, given the age, right, children will always build more. Teenagers, in your youth, you're always transforming more. All the knowledge, becomes productive work. You're procreating, you're having children. Teenagers or even the more younger you are, you'll quickly metabolize and transform your food. So that's dominated by transformation, and your old age is dominated by movement and decline. You dry up and your body shrivels up. But what happens is that all of us, right, could have an exaggerated tendency for one of these functions lifelong. For example, if your body likes to build more, or if you're kapha dominant, then you basically are, let's say the easiest way to see this, you have more excess tissue than anybody else. You're even slower, right? Because when you're building, things slow down. So you're slower, you may be more grounded in your speech. Everything is more, you may have bigger eyes, bigger hair, thicker, everything is more, you're building. If you like to transform more, you may have a very active mind, but you may be very sharp and focused. Your digestion may be hot. You may react stronger to the sun, because anytime you have the opportunity to transform, your body likes to over-transform. It loves transformation. And Vata is dominated by more of a movement. There are children who like to move a lot. Their attention is not in one place. They're always fidgeting, and they're going from one thing to the other. That could be a tendency. We could have it throughout our lives, the dry, moving tendency. So depending on what your exaggerated tendency is. Now I'll go to prakriti and vikruti. We're all depending on the nature of the sperm and the egg at conception. You are usually born, right, unless you're in perfect balance and harmony and all three are equal. Most of us are born with a dominance. Some people are those children who just build and sleep, those cuddly big children, or kids who break out into hot rashes and they are transforming. They have loose stools and hot rashes and they cannot take the sun. And they're like the Pitta children. And there could be kids who are just uneasy and moving and fidgeting and not sleeping well because Vata likes to move and not rest. They could be the Vata children. Right? So that's prakriti. However, as you go,
would that be all the colic and everything that happens, would you categorize that as Vata?
For the most part, right? Like the distended stomach, the air filling in places, that unease. You see in childhood, it's very distinct in babies. You can see these three very distinctly. And then as we grow, right, depending on what we consume, where we live, what experiences we have, how we interact with the world, that can change your original constitution a little bit, or create an imbalance, you would say. And that is called vikruti. Right? So your vikruti is the imbalance that has happened beyond and beneath. You could be born with a kapha dominance, but you could adopt regimens which keep you healthy. Right? Or with a pitta or with a vata. But as we kind of really create imbalance, that imbalance is called vikruti.
Okay.
And it could be the same. You could have kapha prakriti and you could have kapha vikruti, which means you've really exaggerated it even beyond what you were born with.
If you can quickly touch upon the role of emotions, say fear, anger, overthinking, and those kind of stuff, how it plays into someone feeling good or not feeling so good.
So the first sutra of the Ashtanga Hridayam, which is one of my favorite ancient texts, is Raga Adi Rogan. All the diseases which begin at emotional imbalance. Raga is lust, Adi is etc. So anything that goes wrong in your body, any dis-ease begins with an emotion. Because even if you eat extra, you're basically greedy. So it's a big part of it, right? Now, there are two aspects of it, and I want to touch upon both briefly. One aspect is every emotion will support one of these functions, right? I'm going to just help you. I'm going to get your help now. Again, getting into the gunas, the properties, the qualitative aspects of things. Now, you talk about, you said overthinking, right? Or anxiety. Does that have movement? Of course, it's an intuitive concept. Is it a movement, right, in your nervous system? Or is it like a sluggish denial, depression in your movement system, in your nervous system?
I would say movement, because I think it's dynamic depending on the situation. Certain things can make me think a lot. Certain times, certain junctures, I would just be content with, okay, I can just be easy and move on.
Absolutely, right? So it supports movement. The guna of overthinking is movement, because in your brain you had a thought. Now the thought is ruminating, it's staying, and it's picking up pace. It picks up pace, for example. It's just the more you think, the faster it moves in your brain, and you can't take it anymore. Right?
Kind of like fight or flight mode.
Yeah, right. I know, and sometimes there's freeze mode where you just go shut down. But so you tell me. So in that, right, when we talked about the three functions, we talked about Kapha, which is more building, grounding, slower. We talked about Pitta, which is more transformative and hot. And there's the third Vata, which is movement and decline. So if this is movement and Vata is movement, right, this emotion will aggravate Vata, which means you will be drier. And then, of course, there's a whole science into everything that goes with that, which means you will stay up more, you'll be more anxious, you'll feel more depleted, you'll be more tired, etc. So every emotion, I'm going to ask you another emotion just very quickly. Anger, is it hot? Is it, is it hot or cold, for example? Hot, right? And Pitta is hot. So people who are angry usually can feel very hot. They can get acidity. So every emotion can support a corresponding reaction in your body. Today in the West, so that's the one aspect of it, right? In fact, in the first few sutras of the Ashtanga Hridayam, which say, what will increase Vata? It says Chintya. Chintya is a word. Besides movement, dryness, it says Chintya will increase Vata, which means when you're thinking too much, it will increase Vata, right? Depression, sluggishness will increase Kapha, because it's an immobile. It holds it's in the same place. Emotions have a very, very big role, not only in the way they interact with your body, but in terms of the choices you make in the world. So from within to outside, emotions will determine how you interact with the world. Now, that's the second aspect, right, is that every emotion has a corresponding chemical reaction in the body. Right? Very simple. I'm thinking about, let's say, the loss of a loved one, which has not even happened. It could be so powerful that I could release tears. That's a chemical reaction, right? So one thought, which may not even be real, has a chemical reaction. With that, every single thought, 24/7, alters your body's chemistry. In the long term, the chemistry will alter the biology of the body. And again, your health is affected because your biology. I mean, we are being fed by this nutrient transportation system, your blood, your plasma, that goes all around the body. And every thought changes your blood chemistry. Then it's a no-brainer that how important emotions are. Emotions that are in equilibrium to what your body is, the nutrients of your body. Very, very important. So that being said, emotions, big role in the choices you make, in the climate and the environment of your body. And I'm so glad more and more we're talking about this today.
What about hydration? How important is it? Several people think, morning I get up, I gulp down a liter of water, or 4 cups of water. What is the role of doing things correctly so as not to disturb the equilibrium or the internal climate that you're talking about?
Why, I have to say that you're very intuitive about this science. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you. You can
thank you.
Take it in a very deep manner. I love it. And, this is one of the things that I say, right? What is the journey? We start off in youth like a grape, and we end up as raisins, right? Your old age, we are like raisins, all wrinkled. And the difference between the grape and the raisin is the loss of water content, the dryness that sets in. So then the preservation of youth and the preservation of longevity is preservation of those fluid elements. But the fluid elements are not just hydration and water.
Mm-hmm.
That is the important part.
Mm-hmm.
The fluid elements has everything that's soft and fluid. Most importantly, good fat, right? So water is very complicated because water can change which membrane it is in given osmotic pressure,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you have to think about it like even if you've ever worked in a farm, right? It's the farmer is very careful about how much he waters, how he waters, whether even if you have a plant at home, you cannot just dunk a bucket of water.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
There's a certain time it will absorb water better. There's a certain speed it will absorb water. You can't put it in one part. So similarly, I think overhydration is a problem, right? Because, overhydration is 100% a problem because there are membranes in your body, it's like, let's say the concentric circles. And the exchange of fluids is such a big part of it, how it goes through every membrane.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of distort that function when we just guzzle crazy amounts of water, even though it goes through our GI, gastrointestinal tract, and in Ayurveda, fluids are separated and all of that happens, but still, it's very important. That being said, I say you drink in Ayurveda, you drink to thirst.
Mm-hmm.
Drinking excessively it's like a monsoon in your gut. It's going to make it slimy, give rise to parasites, kill your Agni, things won't grow properly. Your Agni is a digestive fire. So you don't overhydrate. I say you drink warm water, sip by sip, to thirst throughout the day. More in the first half, less in the second half of the day. And then your body already knows. That happens when it's sip by sip, it's lateral, it's slower absorption, you're not guzzling, everything goes right. The temperature of your body being warm-blooded is kept intact. That being said, you make sure that you're not depriving your body of fats at all, right? So, of course, you always support in Indian food, there's always a concept of a vaghar, which means you temper your spices in a good fat. That's brilliant because the spices, which are their hot nature, will help in the breakdown of the fat. So your fat is being broken down nicely. You're not doing crazy amounts. You're doing in moderation throughout the day. You're oiling your body, but not depriving yourself, right? Some people are like, this is an amazing chickpea salad. It has no fat. It has nothing. Just plain oil. I'm like, that is the problem. If you put the fat and you put the spices, I will take it, right? So for example, I think that's the one basic principle. Keep fats and keep spices in all your foods. Of course, depending on how much you can take and digest, it doesn't have to be great amounts, but that's your key to preservation of life.
Okay. And so we really can't emphasize more that there is no one-size-fits-all approach to anything for that matter. What is the role of Agni in someone being at their robust health? And what about the doshas, Vata, Pitta, Kapha, and can Agni differ based on the body types or the categorization?
Absolutely. So Agni is extremely important, right? I mean, Agni is your digestive environment in the gut, which supports breakdown of your food, absorption of nutrients, transportation of nutrients, right? So really, digestion, absorption, separating nutrients and waste, and then sending them off where they need to go. So you are only as strong as your Agni is. I have not met a single person who says my Agni is fine and I'm not. And, if there's any disease, it starts, in your physical realm, Agni becomes a part. Even if it's an emotional realm, eventually Agni will become a part of it. Now, so my question to you is that, so if the function of Kapha, because we're saying how Agni differs in doshas, if the function of Kapha is to slow down the breakdown, you think the Agni will burn sharper if you want to slow cook something? Is the Agni going to burn sharper or duller?
Oh, it's going to be a very gradual process, I would think.
So Kapha has lower Agni because it builds more. So Kapha, if you have a dominance Kapha, prakriti or vikruti, and you're like, oh my God, I eat so much, I build so much, because your Agni is not breaking things down, right? Pitta, if Pitta transforms quickly, will the Agni be sharper or duller?
It's probably going to be very rapid.
Very sharp, right? Just burns things up, right? Like lava. So generally people with Pitta they can have soft bowel movements, go 2-3 times because the body breaks down. Vata is volatile. It's wind. On a windy day, you're making a bonfire doesn't work. But it could be because it's very volatile. Sometimes it's windy, sometimes it's a volatile thing. It's moving all the time. So with Vata, there could be volatile Agni, which means it can burn well one day, hungry, one day I'm hungry, one day I'm not hungry. One day I'm constipated, one day I'm not constipated. And that could be your typical Vata digestive environment.
Okay, makes a lot of sense. How best can you build your Agni?
And anybody listening to this, the first thing I want you to know is that Ayurveda is the science of flow, of finding your flow. So don't let any of this information make you rigid and be like, oh my God, now I have to do this, right? Because by that token, the flow is going to be disturbed. You understand the beauty and the order of nature and you embrace it with love. That's the way to follow Ayurveda. I mean, only then can you be Ayurvedic. But if you're going to like, oh, I have to eat at 5, you're not Ayurvedic, right? Mm-hmm. It has a flow because you're working in flow and harmony. Now, that being said, right, just the gentle understanding of how we are diurnal mammals. We wake up with the sun and we sleep with the sun. And the sun determines all our cycles and how we function. When to sleep, when to wake up. So when the sun is at its peak and the metabolic activity is the highest, your Agni corresponds with the sun. Your Agni is the highest when the sun is highest. So lunchtime around 12, 1 is when your digestive fire will do the best job of digesting your food. When do you go to bed? When the sun is down. When the sun is down, there's a slow down. And by 10, between 10 and 2 are the best hours to be asleep. So you want to ideally sleep as close to 10 as possible, right? But all our cues, it's such an intuitive science. Whatever activity you want to do, let's see what's happening in the world outside and understand what might be happening in the world inside and then take that gesture. And if you did that, what you're doing is essentially swimming with the tide. Instead of saying, I'm going to eat dinner, your body is swimming against the tide. At every given hour, there are certain juices. I'm going to call them juices. People can call them hormones, neurotransmitters. I'm going to just call them juices. There's certain juices released at different parts of different times of the day. Those juices support certain activities. And while those juices are still living in your body, you want to conduct those activities. So they happen effortlessly and they happen with ease, whether it's sleeping at 10 because you have higher melatonin or whether it's eating lunch at lunchtime because you have more digestive enzymes.
Okay. What is the importance of sleep in helping an individual rejuvenate and feel good? Because that seems like a much ignored aspect, and I want you to throw light on that aspect, please.
So the night is as important, if not more, than the day. We've all our life is about designing our day. I say, if you put half as much effort in designing your night, planning for your night, you won't have to do much in the day. Like the day will be a breeze because the 3 pillars in Ayurveda, the Trayopasthamba, 3 pillars of well-being are ahar, food, nidra, sleep, brahmacharya is how appropriately you use your senses. Nidra or sleep is huge from all aspects. Your body is going through free repair. Like your cells say, hey, it's such a loving, I feel so grateful to the body because it's such a loving service your body offers and says, hey, why go to sleep? It's time for you to rest. I'll do the work. And, all of these great juices come out to rest, repair, see what's needed, what's not needed, to throw gunk out, to process emotions. I mean, what a gift sleep is, right?
The role of exercise in an individual being, again, feeling good, feeling healthy. And we talked about the mind-body connection and whatnot. And we have covered so much here, Nidhi. What is the role of exercise?
Exercise, again, Vyayama. I mean, even before we had the word exercise, Vyayama was a part of our science. And, your body needs to move. I mean, yoga has its own asana has its own merits, right? Normal Vyayama, normal exercise also has its amazing merits because it's like you take your car for a drive if you've not driven it, right? Because everything needs to be moving, everything needs to be stimulated. When you do Vyayama or exercise, and especially asana, you're kind of stimulating certain glands in your body. You're moving your joints, you're stimulating your glands and ensuring health. We look after our muscle, whatever we can see, we look after skin, hair. But their glands and their muscles and the body is working so hard always to keep them. Exercise helps to restore their health and to keep them in motion, to keep them working. So I say exercise is extremely important, but even in your mental health, right? Our nervous system, we just said, right, in the beginning of the podcast that anxiety is this mobile overthinking. Your nervous system loves to go in a rut. It's like this. It'll catch on to this. Let's go this way. I'm working hard. I'll just keep working hard. I'm doing this. I'm just going to keep doing that. And your nervous system loves this clingy child. Just wants to cling on to something, right? When you're inspired, you're over inspired, right? So exercise allows you to systematically break that obsession that your nervous system goes into. And it's a gift to your nervous system to be able to do that. So it's a no-brainer for every individual to exercise.
Okay, what a fascinating conversation, Nidhi. Our guest Nidhi Pandya on emotional, physical, and mental well being. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Be sure to follow the podcast, rate the podcast, and leave a review from your podcast app of choice. Follow me on Instagram and YouTube at YP Kumar. That's VAIPKUMAR for all things digital media and lifestyle. Until next time, with yet another interesting guest and yet another interesting topic, it's me, Vi, saying so long.